so many ways. Normally when I go somewhere and speak, I tell them don't read all that stuff about me, because the reality is that when you get to know me, you'll know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think the reality is that we've had a tremendous opportunity to share things about Black history, innovators, phenomenal women and men that have created a paradigm shift in Black history and allowed us to do things that we never could do as people of color. Today I'm going to share with you some outstanding, phenomenal Black scientists and inventors that have paved the way for many of our sciences, inventors, because the reality is we all stand on the shoulders of somebody else. When I begin to think about these inventors that I'm going to talk about, both past and present, I begin to think about my own history of my family, the people that were in my family, the people that laid the foundations. And the reality is that a foundation was laid for everybody in this room today, regardless of your ethnic group or where you were born or where you were raised. Because the reality is this: if you don't stand on the shoulders of somebody that's doing something phenomenal, whose shoulders are you really standing on? And so today I want to okay, it's working. Love it. Today I want to talk about, as I forestated, about some amazing Black men and women in sciences, in medicine, and inventors that created the pathway for us, and even myself. One of the things I love about the people I'm going to talk about is that they all came through great struggle to receive their dreams and to walk in places that they never thought they could walk. They never gave up their obstacles, from racism, from being disdained, from being downtrodden. And they continue to move forward. The reality is, and I'll say this, and I'm going to move forward. When I left OSR back in 2014, I already knew that my path had already started 20 years before I even got into the building. I just needed to make sure that I stayed true to myself and to my dreams and to my pursuit of doing something. Another thing about these incredible innovators and scientists and inventors, one thing that they did, they never allowed distractions to stop them from being a person of persons that contribute to society. And you're going to see some people that they never forgot about their community. They never forgot about bringing forth things that will allow everybody to succeed. And that's what we do today. We want everybody to, especially our young people, and I'm not saying people don't do it, but we need to learn how to be grassroots, get your boots on the ground, and that's what I do. The first inventor, now, I could not find when he died, and that's not unusual. If you're a Black person that was born that time, they didn't keep valuable records on you, probably your birth nor your death. But this particular individual, Benjamin Bradley, phenomenal young man. Back his time, he did not have the liberty to gain literacy without doing it undercover. He had to learn how to read and write from his slave owners' children. And because he had to do that, he enjoyed the opportunity to go into places that during that time, Blacks were not allowed to go to. He was an individual that created the first steam engine for the warship. A lot of people don't know about him. A lot of people don't understand his contributions. When he formulated the warship, because he was Black, he was not able to get a patent because of the color of his skin. So what he did, he made this steamship and he sold the steamship to get money and to buy his freedom. That's amazing that this brilliant young man could not take hold of his own intellectual property because of the color of his skin. But we've come a long way from that particular time. He also created it from a gun barrel, pewter, and he also ended up being an assistant in the science department at the United States Naval Academy. Something unheard of if you were a person of color. Dr. Edward Boucher, brilliant man. His parents, this is not, but his parents At Yale College back then, blacks were not allowed to go to Yale College, which is Yale University now. But Dr. Boucher, brilliant, intellectual, scientist, mathematician, his parents always dreamed that he will be able to go to Yale College. Here's why. His dad was an ordained deacon in his church, and his dad was a janitor at Yale College. His mother washed the clothes for the Yale students. Their aspiration and their dreams for Dr. Boucher came to pass. He got into the first African American to go to Yale College, the first African American to earn his PhD in the United States from Yale University. Brilliant. And you know, I always tell people, I'm gonna always be honest. As a person of color, we have to fight through the buildings, the walls, jump over the hoops in order. And he did that. He took some classes in French, German, Greek, and he maintained his undergraduate work and graduated summa cum laude in the midst of all of the pressures. He also, after his legacy, he had a scholarship named after him. And so the reality is, Dr. Boucher, I could talk about a lot of other stuff, but I don't have time. When I began to look up this man, I began to read, I began to engulf what he did to set a precedence that regardless of where you are in life as a person of color, regardless if they say you can't go, you go anyway. I'm pretty sure most of us has heard of Dr. Julian. Amazing man, amazing chemist. He had the same struggles. He was the first one to go to Harvard and get his master's degree. They even offered him a teaching position, but because of the status or the status of what was going on because of a person of color, he had to remove himself from his particular position because the people that went to Harvard did not want him to teach them. They were very concerned about him teaching the kids that didn't look like him. And so because of that, that did not stop him from doing what he needed to do. So many great things about, he had an award named after him, but the thing that I really enjoyed about reading about him, he was known as a soybean chemist. And he used natural, organic products, or if you will, to create the medicine. He even was part of the creation of the birth control pill. Even the cortisone shot that for most athletes and people that have trouble with their back that you get today, if you got a problem with your knee or whatever, guess what? This gentleman, Dr. Percy, created the environment and laid the foundation for us to get these things naturally. One of my favorites, Dr. Lincoln Hawkins. He created a polymer sheath, and I began to look, and I said, look at the telephone wires that we have today. Because during that time, they created the wires that was very expensive and heavy, and they even used unsafe particles and products to create it. He came up with his buddy to create a sheath to govern the safety of the particles that they were putting together, or the material rather, and the material that him and his partner made was able to withstand severe heat and cold weather. And because of his invention, because of his brilliant scientific mind, they created the polymer sheet that will allow telephone lines to go all over the United States. And I know we use Verizon, we use all these other man-made stuff, or Verizon don't have a keynote on this. It was Dr. Hawkins who created this. I tell people all the time when I talk to kids, when I go to schools, especially during Black History Month or even a History Month, to find out who the phenomenal Black scientists and inventors that created everything that we use today. Most of it was created by people of color. He also was awarded the National Medal of Technology by the former president, who's now deceased, H.W. Bush, one of the highest honors you can get as a scientist and inventor. This is my buddy. This is one of my buddies. I really love Dr. Massey. Dr. Massey was a genius. He graduated from high school at 13. Now, I don't know if we know anybody that graduated from a full high school at 13. He was considered a prodigy. At 13, he graduated, and then he got his degree in chemistry at 18. President Johnson appointed him to be one of the professors and chairpersons, at the Naval Academy. Something unheard of. This is not in this, but because the color of his skin, he was not allowed to live in Annapolis. The real estate agents would not find him a home in Annapolis because of the color of his skin. He ended up settling in Laurel, Maryland. But the brilliancy of this particular person, I'll read this. He is also noted for his works on drugs to combat cancer, mental diseases, malaria, meningitis, and herpes. He also received a patent to combat gonorrhea. We don't talk about those things, but if you get one of these diseases, God hope you don't. This is the gentleman. This is the brilliant doctor, scientist that created a patent for this disease to be combated. Dr. Jane Wright, another incredible woman of color. She was also a surgeon and a scientist. And one of the things that she did, she created the landmark, or laid the groundwork for dealing with chemotherapy. She wanted to use natural tissue versus using harmful tissues in order to help patients dealing with cancer. She went on to have an amazing career in medicine. She did so many things for the cancer community in dealing with chemotherapy. I don't know if you know one. I'm pretty sure you know someone that have had to take chemotherapy. One thing about chemo is that it breaks down the healthy cells. And it is very, very painful. It's very, very debilitating. Even my father-in-law, who went through and now a survivor of cancer, we saw what chemo did to him in radiation. She was one that was one of the innovative persons that created a different way to look at chemotherapy. Are they still using her ideas and her innovative scientists? I don't know. But I tell you, she was amazing. She ended up dying at 93 years old. Some of the things that I read about her, I couldn't even talk about because it would take a couple of days. I was really blown away when I read about this young lady, an inventor, Miss Brown. Incredible, created the avenue for us with security systems. I don't know what security system you have. You may have ADT, you may have Brinks, but she was the woman that innovated and had a patent. Peepholes, surveillances, closed circuit TV. She and her husband, Albert Brown, started this legacy for protecting our homes, for protecting our places of work. It was her. And she was a full-time nurse. So when people tell me that they can't do more than one thing, I tell them you got to give it a shot. One of the things I've learned is that when you tell yourself you can't do something because of the obstacles and the opposition, then I think you're selling yourself short. You're brilliant in your own way. And I oftentimes, when I mentor young men and young ladies, I tell them all the time, never let people stop you because how you look or how they think you should be. Go beyond that because you were created to do something phenomenal. Greatness is inside of you. And she never stopped because she didn't have all the flowery education. And I think education is important. But when you have a dream, when you have something that's outside of the box, I think you need to go for it because you never know the legacy. You never know what you do, how it would touch people years after you're gone off the earth. I may have saw Dr. Jesse Wilkins out there. This gentleman, when I read his bio, when I read about him, I said, man, this guy's a mathematician. This guy graduated with his PhD at 19 years old. He entered the University of Chicago at 13 years old. His mom had a master's degree in teaching, and his dad was an attorney. What I'm saying to you is that the national press said they called him the Negro genius. Think about this. They labeled him the Negro genius because he defied all the odds, all the tests, all the preliminary objections to him, and he showed it by being a phenomenal contemporary mathematician. His part to society, he developed mathematical models to explain gamma radiation and developed a shield against gamma radiation. He did a lot more. He taught at Tuskegee University for a year. He taught at Bell Labs. He worked there. Just an amazing man of color that people don't talk about unless you have a Black History program, unless you do something that elevates them. But these people laid the groundwork. And that's why I tell our children and our grandchildren, there's nothing that you can't achieve if you put yourself in the right mindset and you want to be a change agent. Right now, he's a change agent, even though he's not alive. His legacy is still going on. I think about it. Man, you know, when I think about he attended college at 13. And I thought, he must have been really not only brilliant, he must have had some maturity. Because to go to school at 13 with normally 18 and 19 years old and deal with the pressures, but he was gifted to do what he needed to do. We all in this room are gifted. Don't ever allow yourself to be put in somebody else's box because they don't believe you can achieve something that's outside of their box. Dr. Patricia Bath, favorite, because of her, I wear glasses. Not that I'm blind. Her whole goal was to fight for people of color that was unable to get their eyes examined. She was the warrior in science to make sure that people of color would get their eyes examined, because she did a study where people of color were least likely to get their eyes examined because they did not have the financial or economic strength. And so she made sure by her research and to create an environment for people of color to get their eyes checked. She even formed a society, a corporation rather, to prevent blindness and to help people go to the eye clinic. She was major in starting Harlem Hospital from doing surgery. One of her major work was to prevent cataracts or to treat cataracts. And as you get older, your grandparents, they will have cataracts. Some young people have cataracts. Some of us have to wear glasses. Some of us have to get eye surgery. Back then, if you looked like me, you were not allowed to get eye surgery. The older people during her day were not allowed to get eye surgery. She dealt with racism. She dealt with sexism. She even went to go teach at UCLA, the Drew School of Medicine. And because they wanted to put her in a box because she was a black female, she took her experiments and her expertise overseas. And they bought it and they believed in her more than the people in academia in the United States, because she was really concerned. Let me pause for real quickly. If you're not doing something to create a better environment, whether it's scientifically, whether you're inventing or you're creating an environment for medicine, then what are you doing with yourself? That's the question. We live a life and we need to leave a legacy. I write quotes, and I said this quote, and this quote says, leaving a financial legacy, this is from me, is important, but leaving a spiritual legacy is essential. No, I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about these men and women that I've read. I've read that they, regardless of the fight they had to fight, they wanted to leave the place a lot better than when they found it. I tell people all the time, everywhere I go and speak in different places, I try to motivate people and tell people, you're not done. If you have the active use of your limbs, if you still can think and you still have dreams, then you can do amazing things, especially if you're a person of color. No, I'm not against the people that don't look like us, but I'm telling you, we have this internal fortitude once the light bulbs comes on, that we can achieve greatness. Because the bottom line, the last people I looked at, all of them have greatness to contribute to society in such a powerful way. James Edward Maceo West, phenomenal inventor, professor in science. He created this mechanical energy into acoustic energy for microphones. The microphones that we have now, it was because of him. It's because what he created to allow the microphones to have energy. And basically what he did, he took away from using these batteries that causes microphones to die back then. So 90% of microphones are using his invention, his technology to create a better way to speak. Now, y'all didn't give me a microphone today. I asked somebody for a microphone. Did you have a lapel microphone? But they said, no, you got a big mouth. I said, true statement, true statement. He's a prolific writer. He also has more than 250 patents in so many varied areas of technology and inventions. He grew up in Farmville, Virginia, which is right outside of Richmond. And his parents was concerned about him staying in the South during this time because of the racial riots and the racial discrimination. So he ended up going to Hampton College for a year, and then he transferred to Temple University where he got his Bachelor of Science in Physics. He also won the Medal of Technology, or was awarded by George W. Bush, the late president's son. When I looked at her, I was like, wow, Dr. Shirley Jackson, the first woman of color to graduate from MIT. From MIT, she was the first to earn a doctorate in nuclear physics. Now, those of you that are scientists and doctors here in the scientific field, I'm not going to touch nuclear physics. I know a little bit about physics, but I'm not going to mess with the nuclear. I'm going to stay. But one of her developments is including the touch-tone telephone, the portable fax. Every time you send a fax, every time you look at your caller ID, think about Dr. Jackson. Dr. Emmett Chappell, 14 patents, who discovered that a particular combination of chemicals caused all living organisms to emit light. He also partnered with Grace Piccolillo in instantly detecting bacteria in water, which led to the improved diagnosis of urinary tract infections. I don't know if you ever had a urinary tract infection. I haven't, but I know people that had. His research allowed them to have a way out and to understand that you can combat it the right way through scientific measurements. The thing about it, what he loved too, is that he believed in vegetation. He talked about trees and how to preserve the trees through his scientific inventions. Everybody should know her. She's 100 years old today. But here's the funny thing, what I said they waited till she was almost 100 plus years to honor her. She grew up in West Virginia. She went to West Virginia State University. Brilliant mathematician, phenomenal woman. And let me tell you something, I like math, but what they had her to do it was called NACA first. I didn't know that until they made it NASA. But it was NACA because it was segregated. And during her time as a mathematician and working to help the space and help all the things they needed to navigate and to show them where they're going wrong from a mathematical position, she was a part of it, and she led the computing, the West computing. Now, the thing that got me, I'm not a lady, and we as men, I got to help you out. We probably can go to the restroom anyway. But they made the women go to a separate restroom. So they had to walk. And she also, I think in 2015, former President Obama gave her the Medal of Freedom. Here's the thing. I thought about her that we didn't know about her until the book was written on Hidden Figures. You need to get that book before you look at the movie. The book Hidden Figures is amazing. And she's in it, and a couple other amazing people that was with her. The reality is that her legacy to go beyond the walls of racism. Go beyond the walls of saying you can't do it or you're not going to get accepted to the university. She did it. She's 100 years old, excited. If you saw the movie should have touched her heart in a special way of these 4 women that did not allow themselves to be distracted from meeting what they needed to meet. I'm almost done. Lonnie Johnson. Now, let me tell you something. When I read about him, I started laughing. My brother Eli. He invented the super soaker water gun. And I don't know you, but during family reunions, during playing with our kids, I had to give me a super soaker gun. Because it was on. It was on and popping, as they would say, if I could use that vernacular. It was on and popping. But he also developed the Johnson thermoelectric energy converter, which converts heat into electricity. He also owns 2 companies in Atlanta. The reality is that if we don't look up these people, we don't tell our kids about grandkids about these phenomenal, incredible scientists and inventors. And I know if you know anybody about a kid, they had a super soaker gun in their hand, getting ready to light you up, getting ready to get you during a picnic or a fun time. I know I had one. I was lighting them up. But he's also was an Air Force veteran, and he worked at NASA. He also worked on the stealth bomber. He also did a lot of things with propulsion and a lot of different things. But I said, man, something as simple in my mind as creating the super soaker water gun that is still used everywhere when you have a picnic. When AFOSR had their picnic, get your super soaker. Now, I couldn't find out how old this young lady was. Dr. Hidayah, Nicole Green, and I know you heard about her, brilliant in scientist, African-American physicist, tremendous woman, decided to use laser to deal with cancer. Her whole idea about using laser was she was an orphan, and her aunt and uncle took her in. She graduated, she went to schools, and she graduated. She was first going to be working on a calculus, and she met this young lady during her career, or during her, I think her undergrad. And the young lady said to her, she was finishing her degree in physics, and she said to Dr. Green that if you can do calculus, you can do physics. And so basically what she did, she created, and is still going through trials, and where she wanted to relieve the pain of chemotherapy and radiation by using the lasers not to destroy the healthy tissues. Because chemotherapy and radiation destroys both tissues, the healthy and the bad tissues. But her scientific mindset and her idea to change that platform was simply incredible. I realized today that if it wasn't for her taking the leap, going through some of the difficulties, now she has a center that she created, I think it's Aura Green Center, where they take in, they're doing studies and research to make it better for the children and the adults to deal with radiation and chemotherapy, to use laser versus destroying the human tissues or the human blood. We gotta be careful, because one thing I know about it, I've seen people again with chemo and radiation, and destroys all the blood. And that's why we have problems. Yes, sir.
I've supported her research.
Okay. Yeah,
when she was at Tuskegee, and now she's at Morehouse School.
She's at Morehouse. She's a professor at Morehouse School of Medicine now. And she's trying to raise money. She has a Facebook page. You can go in there and you can support her research. Just a phenomenal young lady. And I talked about past and present. Hopefully today I showed you some people that maybe you didn't know about, and maybe you did. But I want to tell you this. Don't just know about these people. Allow them to become a part of your life. Allow their research, their inventions, what they have done to create a paradigm shift in science and medicine and inventions. Allow them to help you, because let me tell you something, and y'all know this working in Air Force Office of Scientific Research. The real work is in STEM. That's where it is now. Science, mathematics, and engineering. That's where the real work is. That's where our kids, especially in the inner city, especially in the urban communities, these kids are not being challenged. They're not being lifted. And so we all have a right to do something to change the platform, to cause them to reach great heights. Thank you very much.